Everything's coming up to Timberwolves. Yeah, in the zone. Simple dedication to the team when you're in the know. To Timberwolves. Yeah, in the soul. Lifting all the positivity for the Wolves to grow. So, where we going from here, man? We listen week to week to get the clearest to clear. Recaps, got that. Soundcap, got that. Team ads, got that. So tell me what they do not have, huh? How dare you? Foolish question to ask, but I don't mean to go brag. But boy, they got all the stats, and they could go all the way back from KG to Zerbiak. And all I'm saying is that the cast a one-stop shop for my Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Ain't a thing falling, everything's coming up. Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Falling from the autumn, ain't nobody gonna stop them. It's the Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Phonies, you can spot them, they the sheep under their clothes. Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Talk a lot about them, y'all don't really know. Let's go.
Welcome into the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. My name is Gabe Anderson. I'm joined as always by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
We're doing well. We're halfway through the year.
We are.
Everything's going to go up from here.
Yeah, everything is coming up Timberwolves, in fact. And no Jared this week, hoping to have him back soon. But we are joined another week by Blake. Blake, how we doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Disappointed about last night's. But, you know, maybe just Detroit's our kryptonite. Who knows?
Yeah.
They shouldn't be. I mean, Bojan's a good player. Jaden Ivey's a good player. But other than that, I don't see them as too impressive. But anyway, we can talk about that. This is the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. And give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. And just, tell us what you think about the show as well. So now, with that out of the way, the Wolves, it's technically not exactly midway through the season. We're one extra game through the season. We're 42 games through the season, so 40 games left. How do you like where we are right now, Chris? 42 games in the season, basically at the halfway point. What do you see now, the Wolves, and where are we at right now?
I mean, we're nowhere. We're not even without Karl Anthony Towns, it kind of doesn't matter like where we're at, because I mean, sometimes I run into this when I'm like, oh, should I watch like the second half of this game that might not be going well, or I got something going on. And I think, you know, like I know the players, I know what they can do. And at this point, I just need to see how it's going to work with Cat, like going forward. Like it's kind of to really get too invested game to game when you've got an all NBA player that still needs to be added. But on a positive note, everything coming up Timberwolves style, there's been some huge progress. I mean, Anthony Edwards has turned a 21 point scoring, first 20 games. Now he's been averaging, I think like the last 20 games, he's been averaging like 26, 27 points, shooting really efficiently, really stepped his game up. The play with Rudy is looking better with everybody. Like we're starting to figure out how to work him in, how everything's going to work with him offensive and defensively. I saw something where in the last, 15 games or whatever, we're ninth in defense, I think, or something like that, or half court defense maybe. We were not too long ago, I think maybe a couple weeks ago, we were 5th in half court offense. We were top 10 in half court offense and half court defense, 10 games ago or 5 games ago or something. And it probably only went up from there. The problem is transition were terrible. So I mean, we've got a couple things that we can be happy about moving forward. And at this point, I just want to start adding those positive things together and then hope when Karl Anthony Towns comes in, that doesn't affect that, and it ends up being, an addition to that. So we're doing okay. We got a long ways to go, but until we get our full roster, it's just kind of a wait and see.
Right. Blake, what do you think? Where are we at right now?
It's purgatory, basically. It's a weird one. I think Chris hit the nail on the head pretty well with Cat being out. And when he was supposed to be such a staple of this franchise, and unless I missed something in the news, I still haven't seen when he's supposed to come back. I think we're past the 4 to 6 weeks now, but I haven't heard anything. So just with him out, it's tough to see how the rest of this roster fits. Not that we don't have some depth, but it's okay. I did see the half court thing too about being like top 10 in offense, defense, net and all. And I think the other two teams that were also top 10 in all three were the Philadelphia 76ers and the Nets. And those aren't bad teams to be in a conversation with. It's not like it's the Rockets or the Hornets or anyone sitting at the bottom. Like those are playoff teams in the East. Going to the West, though, I think what makes it really hard to judge the how well the Wolves are doing is like I don't know if the West is stacked or not when it's so close together in so many ways. Like the Wolves are sitting at 10th. They are tied with two other teams, the Blazers and the Jazz, and they are 3 games out from 4th place, which is the Kings and the Mavs. So like we could win a few and be right up there. The Nuggets and Grizzlies are playing great. They're starting to pull away. But after that, it's pretty fair. And the only two at the bottom that are not going to be competing are the Spurs and Rockets. So
And they're not trying to.
Yeah, they just want draft picks. They're happy with that. But when it's all so close, I mean, we could go past the trade deadline and I still don't know where my expectations are for this team.
Mm-hmm.
If they keep playing like this, if they keep playing 500 or maybe winning slightly more than they lose.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting, and that's why it's so interesting with the Wolves right now is they win 2 games and like the Clippers lose a game or two, then they're in 7th or 6th. Like they're right there. And that's why I think it's going to be so important, and this may sound obvious, just to make the playoffs, because at that point, anything can happen. Like really anything can happen at that point. Chris, go ahead.
I mean, especially if you've got, an all-NBA player coming back and filling in, in a positive way. It's crazy when I was looking at those standings, and I've looked at this a couple of times when people have been, really down on the Wolves for where they're ranked right now in the standings, which, I don't remember many seasons ending at this time of the year, so I'm not too worried about the standings now. But almost every team that's ahead of us has had major additions to their roster from last year, like Denver, Murray and Porter. Sacramento brought in Sabonis. I can't pull up for some reason my thing's not giving me the standings, so I can't read them all. But then we've got the Pelicans bring in Zion back. The Mavericks bring in Wood, who's averaging 20 and almost. The Clippers, got healthy with Kawhi Leonard. It's just wild that so many teams have made that are ahead of us. It's because they made huge additions, which is kind of something that people that with the whole we should have stayed status quo have to realize. Where I would have been fine staying status quo, and we maybe would have been around the same spot if none of those other teams improved, but all those other teams improved greatly. So if we would have stayed status quo, we would have fell back.
Right.
One thing that I think is kind of a positive thing to look at is I saw two things that I've seen recently, and I think are pretty telling with what's going on. Is right now it's a 42nd game of the season. We've played 42 games. And the record with Karl Anthony Towns this year were 10 and 11, 10 wins, 11 losses. And our record without Karl Anthony Towns this year is 10 wins and 11 losses. So to me, I mean, you can look at that 2 ways. One, you could say, well, Karl Anthony Towns really doesn't bring any value to the team. And, good reason to get rid of him. I don't really think that that's obviously true. So the way I would look at it is we've made such improvements with our continuity and how to use Rudy Gobert in these last 20 games where we've made up some of that ground that we didn't have before. Like we're playing at full strength ability and we're not full strength. Like that's a huge win. Like that makes me think with Karl Anthony Towns, it'll push it higher. And to kind of push that a little more, in the last 8 seasons, when Karl Anthony Towns hasn't played, which is 75 games, 80 games over those 8 seasons, the Timberwolves win percentage is 28%. So like pretty much the worst, that's a number one pick kind of win percentage. So 28% when Karl Anthony Towns does not play for the Timberwolves over the last 8 seasons. And this year, without Karl Anthony Towns, we're like 50%. So that just shows how much better the base core now with Rudy Gobert and everybody else and how Edwards is playing, how much better that base core is now than it's been in the past. So again, adding Karl Anthony Towns, can only improve that. Unless he's some sort of like, pariah to the roster, which if that's the case, we'll move him in the offseason maybe. But it just shows that we have a good chance to really start trending forward once he comes back, which I've heard might be another 4-6 weeks still.
That's crazy because, man, what a bad diagnosis at the beginning. Like, what a misdiagnosis if it really is taking that long. Because
I've heard some bad things about our medical staff of late. I heard that this was actually a re-aggravation of an injury that was misdiagnosed earlier in the season in the Golden State game. And then when they were talking to Taurean Prince recently, he mentioned something about how he didn't want to talk about his recovery being so long. There was some sort of confusion with the medical staff. So maybe we'll be replacing our medical staff in the offseason. I'm not sure.
Blake, go ahead.
I don't want to go too far down this road. I don't know if the medical staff is good or bad. I don't want to give hearsay towards that. I don't know if this was their choice or Finch's choice, but last night when the Wolves were down 20, I don't care if it's the Pistons, and there's like 3 minutes left, they kept Anton the entire game. And he fell a few weeks ago, and he's been like questionable to play. And I get that you want him to be your Luka or whoever, franchise player, just he'll carry the team, great. But you have to know when there's garbage minutes, just to wave the white flag on some of these. I know every game matters and all of that, but I don't know why they kept D'Lo and Ant especially in at the end with mostly his injury. And they pulled Rudy, and I was like, it confused me greatly seeing last night. And I was like, you're pulling Rudy, that seems like a waved white flag to me. Why don't you take Ant out here?
Chris, go ahead.
Finch talked about that after the game, and he said that when the medical staff came to him and said Ant's ready to go, there's no risk, and Edwards said that he's fine. He's like, I play him. If you're ready to go and you're healthy, you play. And I think maybe part of that is, obviously looking deep into it, and maybe for likes and hits, but it might be a little shot off the bow of Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell and some of those guys to show this young kid who's got the world in front of him playing injured, playing hurt.
Sure.
Maybe it's okay to play dinged up a little bit when you're not in perfect prime. Maybe it's, just to kind of show a little toughness, a little leadership, a little that kind of thing. We've kind of had a history of some pretty soft players and some guys taking some extra rest. So maybe it's something about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it was interesting because he came in late in it came in at a time where Ant usually doesn't come in. It was late in the third quarter. There was almost a minute left. I was I was at a friend's house and I looked away and Ant was in it. I was super confused because he usually doesn't play those minutes, and I guess it was just a last minute desperation. Basically the Pistons came out in the fourth quarter and put the game away anyway. But yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting move to me as well, considering he took a couple drives and he fell a couple times. And if he gets hurt in that situation, it was almost like, do you remember when he got hurt last year? At the end of the game, we had it pretty much in hand. I think we were up 10, like a minute left. And he fell and then he got hurt, and people were all up in Finch, like, oh, Finch doesn't know how to manage his players, or he's playing his starters too much just to lock up the win. It almost kind of felt like that situation. Now, thankfully, Ant didn't get hurt, but I mean, if he did, I felt like there would be people at Finch's throat right now.
Oh, pitchforks.
Yeah. Blake, go ahead.
That's kind of how I feel, is like, I think there can be, I can appreciate like wanting to prove a point to some of your other players of like, you don't need to be 100%. You can be 95%. And I don't know what Ant's injury is like or what the medical staff know about it and all of that to say like he should play, he shouldn't play. And this is a more extreme example, but I'm pretty sure like the Derrick Rose injury, like with Tibbs, like that was pretty late in the game when it was sealed one way or the other. I don't even remember if they won or lost, but like, and that was maybe just a fluke step he made at a couple minutes more than he should have been in, but maybe it was something else. And it's like one of those, like, you can prove a point here. You can say, yep, Ant, you're ready to go. And I want Ant to be able to trust his body, but as a 21-year-old kid playing at this level, like, I feel like he's just gonna be like, yeah, I'm good. Like, I don't think he's gonna back down, whether or not he actually should. He seems like a guy who's just gonna like put his nose to the grind and be like, whatever, I'll deal, sort of thing. And whether or not that's a good attitude is another question.
His own worst enemy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know for sure, but that's kind of what I'm gathering could be the case.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, let's move forward here talking about let's talk a little trade deadline. I know that we'll go fully into this later on in the season. Obviously, we'll do full coverage of the trade deadline, our predictions, and we'll do a reaction. And particularly if something big goes, you know us. The day Rudy Gobert got traded, we were on the air within a couple hours. So I mean, we're on the pulse of this. So who is one guy that you think you wouldn't mind see moved at the trade deadline? We'll start with you, Chris.
That's such a big question. A guy I wouldn't mind seeing moved. I mean, it all depends on which we're getting back. Like D'Angelo Russell is definitely a piece that I wouldn't mind seeing moved but I need to know what his asking price is. You know, like we have to either sign him. We have three options with D'Lo. We sign him pretty much by the All-Star break, which is 30 days away. We trade him by that same time, or he leaves completely in free agency and we get about $15 million in salary cap. So like, that's a sticky situation. I would like to trade him for a high level starting point guard, but that just doesn't happen. So I don't know. That's a scary one. I would say guys I would move. I would trade Naz Reid if we can get anything for him. I would trade Jalen Noel if we can get anything for him. I would see what the value for a guy like Taurean Prince is. I think he's valuable and I like him, but how many minutes is he going to be playing when Karl Anthony Towns comes back? You know, because that pushes everything back. Slow-mo isn't playing 25 minutes at power forward, so he's going to be pushed to some small forward minutes. And, McDaniels is going to be out of the power forward rotation probably mostly, and he'll be getting, some more small forward minutes. So somebody's going to lose minutes. So if there's value in him, I would search that out opposed to the 7 minutes he might be playing a game. So just kind of role players like that. But for the most part, with the West so close, like Blake mentioned, there's going to be a lot of teams that aren't looking to sell or aren't, they're not gonna there might be everyone might be looking to buy. So I don't know. It's gonna be a real interesting trade deadline. There's no one that really sticks out that I want to trade at this point because again, we don't really know what we have until everyone's here. And guys that are really playing worthless for us, like who's that shooter that we were just talking about? I forget.
Brent Forbes.
Bryn
Yeah,
Forbes.
Brent Forbes. Like he's making, $1.2 million a year. So like if you trade him, all you can bring back is another guy making $1 million. So, that's not gonna move the needle at all. So yeah, I would say stay put. I would like to stay pat and just kind of get healthy and reassess in the offseason unless something amazing for D'Lo happens.
Blake, what do you think?
I can reiterate on probably three of those players that Chris mentioned. I would say the first is Jalen Noel. To me, is one that I would not mind trading. He is a volume shooter, volume scorer, and he doesn't really bring anything else to the table. But to Chris's point, the amount of money he's making is not very big. So I don't know what you can really get for him. I think just if he says, look at my box scores, I put points on the board, he's going to try to demand more than he's worth, and it'd be worth getting rid of him for that reason. But for being a $1 million, $2 million salary player, that's not really worth discussing. Moving up in the salary, I like Taurean Prince, but I feel like he's got to be the piece in any mid-size package just to make money work, just to make contracts work. Like him or don't like him, it's like when the Lakers had rumors about THT and players like that, and they just had to have them in every trade rumor because that was their $10 or $12 million guy or whatever. They had LeBron and AD who aren't going to trade a bunch of $1 million guys. He's our mid-range guy.
Exactly.
Moving up to D'Lo, he's been one being in a contract year, I've hoped to see contract year D'Lo. Whether or not that happens, another question. He to me is somebody that I just have not known what I want out of him the entire year for next offseason because Anthony Edwards is going to get paid whatever amount of dollars needed, and I think he deserves it. D'Lo to me is worth some level of money, a hefty amount of money, but he's going to ask for more than he's worth, and it's I want him to play well and get, but then he'll ask for more than he's worth. And if he plays poorly, well, we could get a budget on, but do we want a guy that's playing poorly on our team to get a big salary? So I don't know how well I think D'Lo fits here with the salary. My biggest problem with getting rid of him is I don't think he's a superstar player, but I don't think it's going to be easy to find somebody of his caliber to just replace. You can find some good depth pieces. You can find some picks for him, whatever you want. But I don't think you can find a D'Lo caliber player very easily to start at PG and with him out. And I don't think Jordan McLaughlin or Austin Rivers are bad, but I think they're solid backups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
I mean, that's exactly the issue we have is D'Lo's skill set, and he's young. D'Lo is still super young, but his skill set is right below high level starter, and there's a huge gap between that. The next tier below that are guys that aren't very good that you don't want starting on playoff teams, and that's what we're gonna be. So to find a replacement is super hard for D'Lo. And sure, move him, great. But then who starts at point guard? That's the question whenever anyone is stomping their fist for trade D'Lo, I'll listen, but you have to come up with who's going to start at point guard then. And almost always there's no answer.
One name. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, I'll let you say it. The only guy that makes sense to me, I think, for both teams is Terry Rozier.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Because, and the only reason I would move him if I was Charlotte, I mean, not like he's amazing, but he's a good standstill shooter. He's a solid defender. He can get to the rim. and they've got their point guard of the future. So they don't really need, like, I think Rozier and Ball don't really work amazing together.
No.
And, they don't need to have a 20 million guy in their roster backing up LaMelo Ball. So, I mean, that's the only guy that makes sense. And then Charlotte could use that cap space to maybe make some big runs for free agents. So if it's not Rozier, I have a real hard time finding anyone that's near startable quality that would be even possible to trade for. So it's a tough situation.
So do you think?
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, do you think Charlotte would do it just to get like Terry Rozier off the books, basically?
Yes.
Then, or I mean,
Yep.
I don't know if it's like a 1-for-1 exactly. 'Cause I don't know.
It would have to be something, and I've looked at this in the past. I haven't looked at it recently, but it'd have to be like Terry Rozier and some middling piece. Like, who was it? I forget what it was, but there's a couple guys that are making around 8 million that you would have to grab from them, and they've got a couple options in that range. So it's easily workable, and it's, if you squint, it makes sense for Charlotte. The only real question is, could Charlotte get, cap relief and a first for him from somebody else? Could they get, because I could see them moving him strictly just to save $21 million in cap space and then turn and flip that into a max level player in free agency.
Right.
That's super valuable to upgrade that way. But it just depends if some other team will offer more in assets for him. But I mean, $32 million in cap relief is a real big thing.
I was saying, go ahead, Gabe.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say and that's the reason I shared this. What I love about the Terry Rozier potential deal is, I mean, you've got your starting point guard potentially for the next 2 or 3 years. Like, yep. D'Lo is, no matter what you say, even if you say that D'Lo is better than Terry Rozier, and maybe there's some things he does better than Terry Rozier, maybe there's some things Terry Rozier does better than D'Lo. I don't know how they did it, but that's a pretty good contract for a 28-year-old Terry Rozier. 4 years, $96 million. It's
not bad.
I feel like he's on one of the best contracts in the NBA, in my opinion. I'm huge on Terry Rozier. Like, I think he's a really good player. I've seen him kill us time after time again. I think that D'Lo for Terry Rozier, it would be a lateral move, but you lock up a point guard at a low value that you could go and sign at. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know I don't dislike this idea. I just don't know who has the leverage here when you have D'Lo in contract year and Hornets are trying to shave money versus us trying to lock up a guy, and they'll say, like, we have the guy you want to lock up, but he's also, you have him for 3 years versus we're getting your guy for 3 months. And we know that there's slim pickings of this caliber player. Like we said, there's not really alternatives to this. So I feel like I'm trying not to be homerish here. I feel like the Hornets might have a little more leverage than us in this scenario.
For sure. But so here's my push for the Hornets side. Under contract next year, they've got $86 million on the books currently. The salary cap's going to be about $135 million. So already they've got $50 million in cap space, which is a lot. You can sign a lot with that or make, big plays. But now if you take Terry Rozier, and the guys you would have to add would either be, a PJ Washington, who's a free agent that they're going to have to sign, and they went out of their way not to re-sign him. Or James Bouknight, who was a rookie that they thought was going to be their next point guard, shooting guard kind of guy, but he's never really blossomed to anything. So those types of guys are around $5 million. So you would get one of those guys. So now you're saving $30 million from them. So now they've only got $50 million on the books. So they've got, $80 million in cap space. They can go and get 2 max players. They can really build a team around Ball that way and really kind of structure it how they want. I just don't know if that, I mean, that might almost be too much money to spend. I don't know what the free agent market looks like next year, but that's the only sell from their side. And I don't know if that'd work. But another way to look at it, you're talking about contracts, is we're always saying, well, what is D'Lo going to ask for? And saying that, Rozier and D'Lo are similar. So Rozier's like 3 years older than D'Lo for one. And for two, the last 3 years of his deal average about $25 million a year. So if D'Lo came to you and said, hey, I want to sign a 3-year, $25 million contract, I mean, do you just do that? Like, would you rather sign D'Lo at 3 years, $25 million, or would you rather trade him for Rozier at 3 years, $25 million? That's kind of the question.
Right. Personally, I would rather have D'Lo at that, just judging that he's younger. But I don't know. I feel like they're such similar players. Now, obviously, Rozier has more miles on him, as you were saying, but they're such, like, maybe not similar than the way they play, but similar value players that I don't know. I feel like it's a lateral move that I feel like D'Lo is going to ask for more, because I don't know if he is completely if he's sold on here. It's going to be interesting to see because if you think about it, this is going to be like, unless he blows up and has like a career year, this is going to be like his last big contract, probably, right? Like, he might get some small ones at the tail end of his career, but he's 20, he's going to be 27 in the offseason. This is his last big contract, and I think he's going to ask for a lot. Blake, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think 3 years, 25 a year is less than he's going to want. If that was the offer, I would just keep D'Lo. If you want to say that they're 1-1 against each other, I think players often look at different franchises of who they want to join by, they treated this player well, they paid him what he wanted, he stuck around. Like, those things are important versus being a revolving door franchise. So I would say keep D'Lo if you claim they're equal players, for that reason. But I agree with Gabe. He's going to ask for a little more on the Charlotte side. Just really quick, I agree. That's a ton of money, and I think Charlotte could go two ways. They could either say, we have $80 million, give us the top two free agents to pair with LaMelo Ball, great. Or they could go the way of the Thunder and just say, give us your worst contract and we'll suck it up, but you have to give us first with it. And being young and like having nobody else but LaMelo Ball that you really want to build around, like, I don't think they'd be dumb for going with the Thunder strategy.
I agree.
Well, here's the quick thing. The Hornets, they need to decide, and I think the answer is no, because they have him on the books for like 3 or 4 more years. Is Terry Rozier a part of the long-term plan for the Charlotte Hornets? And if he is, then you keep him. If not, then you look to deal him, and a 1 year and he's off the books D'Lo might be a good move. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's I think that's important. I think you can do both. I think you can move him for D'Lo. You can get all that cap space and then even reap more of those bad contract first-round pick kind of deals. One thing that you mentioned, Gabe, that I think is an interesting take and something that I think is important is their attitudes are different. Rozier, in the limited time that I've watched him, has got that bulldog in him. He's got that defensive guy. Like, he'll try to lock up the point guard on defense. He's a real downhill, like, hard driver to the rim. He's that kind of spirit, more in the Anthony Edwards type spirit. And I think, I mean, that goes a long ways. One of my things I hate the most about D'Lo, and I've beat it to death on here, is how he tries to make things, I feel like, make it look too easy. And I think that sort of laissez-faire style isn't conducive to winning basketball games as a team. And it's possible that we'll need a culture change, which might be why we trade him. Not so much talent-wise, but just attitude-wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe we need a different piece around someone like Karl Anthony Towns, and maybe that turns around Karl Anthony Towns' attitude as well. Now, I've never seen D'Lo as like having a bad attitude, but like you said, Terry Rozier definitely has the killer instinct that I've seen time and time again. Also, he's been a winner, not necessarily a championship winner, but he's been a winner at Boston. I mean, what has D'Lo done? Like made the playoffs twice? Like, okay.
He had a good year in Brooklyn. He was an all-star there.
Exactly. No, that's what I'm saying. But what did they do in the playoffs?
Sure.
Nothing. Blake, go ahead.
I was looking something up. Come back to me. Give me 1 second.
Okay, no problem. I was looking something up as well. That's why I sent it to you. But,
for the D'Lo, I don't want to get into. I'll bring this up really quick. The D'Lo, I don't want to get into the leadership conversation or any of that. But I do think the Wolves could benefit from having a veteran presence here that's not just D'Lo or Cat. And I don't think I think Rudy might be getting more comfortable there and stepping up. Like last year, I felt like D'Lo, there was some talk about like he's actually playing defense really well this year, and he's starting to step up in these ways. And what I don't want to speak to his defense as much this year, but like there's been a few times where he's made just some like boneheaded passes that were just like a soft little toss or a little bounce, and the other team runs by, like steals it and lays it up quick, and you're like what are you doing? Like it's the fourth quarter. Like you can't just turn it off for a few seconds here and there. So I kind of agree. I like him overall, but there's been a few times where I'm just like, you need to keep the burner on. You have to kick into gear the whole time and never shut that off. And I've seen him do it here and there, and that can be frustrating.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I don't know D'Lo, particularly at this point in his career. I don't think he's good enough, and I think he's shown that he's good enough to be a number 2 on a team. Is he good enough to be a number 3? I think absolutely. I think you could have a number 3 of him. I mean, particularly if you're looking at like a team like Brooklyn. Now, I know obviously Kevin Durant and Kyrie are a little better than at this point in their career, Anthony Edwards and Pat. But I mean, their number 3 is Ben Simmons, and tonight he didn't even score. So I mean, I think that
how many assists did he have?
He had 13. Actually, I was going to show he had 13 assists, 9 rebounds. And
how many shots did he take?
I got to look that up. But keep talking. This is a
real quick on that note, though, of being the third best. To me, whether or not the fit is right, just in a vacuum talent-wise, I would say I'd place him 4th on our list. Gobert, Cat, and Ant are all a tier above D'Lo.
Or 2.
Yeah. Just if you have to rank them in order, I would put him behind those 3.
Yep.
So he's not a bad 4th player to have either. Like
no, and that's where we're stuck. He's a good player. Like people are an idiot if they're like he's trash. Yes, sometimes he makes bonehead plays. Yes, sometimes his laziness and kind of aloofness out there drives me crazy, and I think it's a bad look for the team for sure. But he also scored like 35 points in the play-in game to beat the Clippers. Like he's got a clip on him. He can score a lot of points quick. I mean, he's just a hard player to evaluate. And there's a thing that, it might be almost as valuable to break up this Cat D'Lo supposed kinship. I think if Cat doesn't have his little D'Lo in the locker room as his, wingman, I think he might have to take a second look at who he is as a player and how he's acting. And maybe that's a huge step forward in Cat's career, because I think that's something Cat needs to do. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see what Tim Connolly does. His first big move this year is for sure going to be this D'Lo, what we do with that decision.
Now, the other name that I've seen floated around, and this is just a couple of things. I've heard Kyle Kuzma. Blake, you had something on Rozier. Go ahead.
No, not Rozier. Go ahead with Kuzma. That's fine.
Okay. Well, I've heard that rumors of Kyle Kuzma. Now, I'm looking at Eastern returns for the All-Star game, and he's like 7th for guards. He's having a really good year. But what would you think? Yeah, forwards. Yeah. What would you think of a potential Kuzma move? I mean, maybe.
I like Kuzma. I've always liked him. He's from Michigan, which is kind of cool, local guy. Um, he brings a lot of the stuff we need. But again, it's like, okay, so now we would have like at the 3-4 kind of position, we would have, Prince, Slow-Mo, McDaniels, Kuzma, Edwards plays some 3, and Cat and Gobert, taking the 4. Like, that's just a lot of bodies there. So I don't know how we would really make it work. I don't know, like if you in a perfect starting lineup, obviously, I think in a Kuzma deal, he makes about 15 million. So you're going to have to lose Prince. You're going to have to lose, some other middling guy. I remember I put out a trade today for it, but you'd have to lose some guys. I'm not sure unless it's D'Lo. I know they were looking at D'Lo. So if it was like D'Lo and Denny Advia, who I kind of like, for Kuzma, or Kuzma and Denny Avia, and I think they had a point guard. Who's their little point guard that they've got on their squad now? Who would probably come our way? I think it's the guy. He was in Denver.
Gary Harris? Is that it?
No.
No. Everyone loves looking up Monte Morris. If we went Monte Morris, Kyle Kuzma, and Denny Advia for D'Lo. I mean, the thing is like, why would they give up all that stuff for? But if they're not signing Kuzma, like Kuzma wants 25 million, he's going to opt out of his players. He's going to be a free agent this offseason, no matter what, and not restricted, so they won't be able to match. So he's going to be a complete free agent, and Washington's over the cap, so they can't sign him at all. So Kuzma's gone. So they're going to try to get anything for him. And since they're over the cap, they can't bring in a point guard that's better than Morris. So they couldn't bring in D'Lo if he becomes a free agent because they won't have any money. So the only way they could is if they sign, do this trade and then sign him. And now they have him, they go at D'Lo, Bradley Beal, Kristaps Porzingis kind of lineup. I don't know. I mean, I would take Kuzma. I just don't really know how he fits. And I don't know if I want to pay him 25 million to push into our kind of packed front court and then it comes back to the question of, well, do you want Monte Morris as your starting point guard? Like he's just kind of a guy to me. So like that, I think total a downgrade overall from D'Lo.
Blake, go ahead.
I'm kind of mixed on this too. I don't dislike Kuzma. I don't think he's a guy that I would give this much money to. I think Washington is being fair to be a little uneasy with how much they want to pay him. And you made a good point about just who he would compete for minutes with in terms of certain, like the Nas Reeds, the Kyle Andersons, the Princes, those sort of guys, the McDaniels. And I guess would Slow-Mo be somebody you'd want to move for him? Because in terms of who it is, you have your max players, you have your Cat, Gobert, Anthony, Edwards, D'Lo, those kind of guys. You have all your $1 and $2 million guys, and the only ones in the middle are Slow-Mo and Taurean Prince. So, that's who they'd be competing with for minutes with, so it makes sense to start moving them. But I don't think Washington does a 1-for-1 of Slow-Mo versus for Kuzma, so it becomes a bigger trade. And I like Kuzma. I don't think I do it just because you have options at that position now. And like we've been saying, D'Lo is a harder spot to fill, and it's going to be a bigger hole than where we'd stand if we added Kuzma, even if we got rid of some guys.
If we get Kuzma, it's basically saying we've decided that McDaniels is not the guy.
Which I would disagree with. He's young. I don't know if he's going to be that good, but to me, we're on two different timelines with Cat and Gobert and them, like D'Lo and Jaden. I don't want to say Jaden's a superstar, all-star, all-NBA defense, whatever, but I feel like he's definitely improved this year. He's our weakest link at starter, but I don't know if I would take a $25 million Kuzma over that,
Right.
like for the price.
Yeah.
Right. So, Chris, you brought this up earlier. What do you think we get for Nas? I mean, obviously he's not in a big contract, but his value's got to be pretty high. I mean,
What we would get is
I think any team would take him.
we would get a nobody and a draft pick. You know,
Oh,
we would
okay.
get some bottom of the
Yeah.
bench guy, which is fine. And we'd hopefully scratch out a draft pick, probably maybe a protected first if we're lucky. I think that would be decent. But I mean, he's our third center. Like, I love Nas more than probably anyone you're going to talk to. And I would love to, truthfully, in my perfect world, I sign Nas to whatever deal he wants, and I move Karl Anthony Towns in the offseason. And I let Nas be the backup 5, and whatever the treasure trove of players and picks we get from Cat, we build around Anthony Edwards and and McDaniels. So we're gonna have maybe a top 10 pick and maybe another young, hopefully up and coming player we get from Nas or from the Cat trade. And then we've got Nas and Rudy. I mean, that's what I would do, but I don't think that's happening. Like that's like a NBA 2K kind of deal. So in reality, I'm not going to pay Nas what he's worth to play 7 minutes a game, and that's what he's going to be playing when Karl Anthony Towns comes back. So you have to try to get whatever you can for him. And if you can get like a first round pick, and you do it. And if you can get a second round pick for Noel, like if we've already made the decision that we're not going to sign both these guys in the offseason, get what you can for them now.
Mm-hmm. It would, I don't know. For me, it would seem like a lot to get rid of both of them just for picks. Because it kind of seems like we're going in two different directions. Like we're giving up all these picks for Rudy, but then we're giving up our interior guys to try to make a run for. I think.
But we're not going to have them anyways. Like those guys aren't going to be on the team next year.
I know, but I'm thinking for this year.
Who cares?
I do, but
we're not. I mean, we're not winning a championship this year. Like we got to build.
No, I know, but I feel like we need to make the playoffs this year at least to keep the progression going. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, I would want to make the playoffs just so the Jazz don't get a better pick.
That's fair.
Go ahead.
I'm on the side of, and I think I said this last time, of I would rather make the playoffs specifically because I would rather have people like Kyle Anderson say, yeah, I'd be willing to play for Minnesota rather than paying a guy like Chase Budinger the Tundra tax to come here when he's not worth it. Because we're a bad team in a cold city and who wants to come here sort of thing. So I would rather see us win. To trade Nas Reed for picks in a vacuum, I don't think is a bad idea. Stepping out a bit, I think it's covering up our mistakes of whether or not you like the Rudy trade or not. We are very draft poor right now, and it basically be saving us for that. I like Nas. I like Nas a lot. I think he's better than being a third guy, even if the two people he's behind are amazing. But he is an interesting one because I think he's shown that he can step up. And you're right. When Cat comes back, he's not going to get the minutes. So he's done a great job, but his stock is high because he's just been given the chance and he stepped up. If the package is right, I'm not opposed to trading Nas, but he's one that he's going to rightfully get more money next year, and I have no idea what his package is.
Exactly. He's one of the guys that I would be happy to see us trade, and I'll be a fan of him forever, and I'll cheer for him on whatever team he's on because I like him. I just don't know. If put it this way, if you were Nas Reed and you made it to the offseason, we didn't trade you, and the Timberwolves were an option to like you could sign with the Timberwolves, would you sign with the Timberwolves? Because I wouldn't.
If you're in Nas's shoes, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
23-year-old player trying to this is like you might just have a couple year contract and then you're going to have a big one after that. You need minutes. You need to play.
Yeah.
Why would you sign up to get 6 minutes a game next year behind these same two all NBA players? Like, I wouldn't sign with us. No, I would turn our deal down,
Mm-hmm.
But Blake, you mentioned how draft poor we are. Just to kind of even reiterate that a little bit, I was looking the other day, and we have almost all of our second round picks going like 4 years in front of us. Almost all those are gone too, like in various other deals. So I think we only have like one. I think we have like 1 or 2 second round picks in like the next 4 years.
Dude, that Rubio for Torian Prince in a second is just looking better every day.
I would take Rubio right now for Torian.
I would too. That's the only trade I can even think of recently that gave us a draft pick.
Yeah.
In recent years. Not as though to me, like, I get that he's an insurance policy right now, but if we got rid of him for a first round, let's say, and we got it, and Cat stays injured, whether or not you want to win this year or not, like, it's Gobert, and then after, is it like Nate Knight and Garza? Are they going to be getting all the minutes? Like, are we happy with that?
You talking about this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
Like,
and that's because that'll be your third center next year. Some G leaguer making $1.5 million. Like, that's what you need. Those guys have to. Your third guy on your depth chart, especially at center, needs to be making no more than $2 million. You know what I mean?
Well, especially when the first two are like 60, 70 million combined.
Yeah, same as like point guards. Like, sometimes they carry a third point guard. They hardly ever get in because sometimes a 2 guard can. That guy can't be making much money. Like, it just can't. It just doesn't work salary cap wise.
Yeah.
I just know if we trade Nas, he's gonna have a game where he puts up 30, and then all of Wolves Twitter is gonna be, that meme of Wolverine holding the picture and he's like fondling the picture. And then it's like a picture of Pat Bev and Jared Vando and stuff, but it's gonna be of Nas Reed dunking or something, and it's gonna. I'm so sick of Wolves Twitter. Like, we got to get over Patrick Beverley. Like, I know this is a side point, but get over it. It's over. He's gone. He's not that good. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's just how I feel.
Tell us how you really feel, Gabe.
It's ridiculous. Like, we got to move. I'm going to put this. Let's see. I got to go to my Twitter quick, and I got to put him on blast. So I said
we got someone said something on our little thing over here.
Oh, we did? Oh, okay. I just saw it.
I'm not going to try the name.
I'm not going to either.
And I agree with him or her. I think that's a good move. I think that's probably what we're going to end up doing, except the thing is D'Lo, we can't run back next year unless we sign him. So that's the tricky thing.
Well,
they're saying they wish we did last year's.
We should have basically not done the Rudy.
I don't have a DeLorean, so until we can go back in time, we got to stick with what we got.
I'm sorry. I usually don't put people on blast, but I'm gonna do it. Screw it, because we're an hour in, and I want to do it. So basically, so this guy on Twitter, he's a pretty relentless Wolves Twitter guy, and he said, "Man, I miss Pat." And I said, "Pat Williams, sure. Pat Beverley, no." And then he said, "Well, you can't be a Wolves fan if you say no." And I'm like, "Okay, sure, yeah. I'm not a real fan."
This is where we're at.
I don't want a player who shoots 38% from the field. He didn't respond.
Yeah, because you're right. Pat Beverley is literally one of the worst basketball players in the NBA this year. Like, statistically, he's literally one of the worst. He was playing like 30 minutes a game and averaging like 2 points a game on 30% shooting. Like, get out of here. Like, don't tell me his legs look like they hurt so bad when he's running. Like, he just doesn't have it. We milked everything we could out of him last year. I just don't want to hear about him anymore.
Here's last thing I'll say about the Patrick Beverley thing. If we're gonna get a guy who's like all about grit and grind and the attitude, I'd rather bring in someone like Lance Stevenson and give him a chance on like a 10-day.
We gave him a 10-day contract at some point.
I know
Yeah,
we
he
did,
did.
but I'd rather try that again than bring back Pat Beverly on a veterans minimum. I'd rather do that.
Sure. I'll go against the grain here. I get that Patrick Beverly's been terrible this year. I would want either him or somebody back just for that grit and grind, veteran presence attitude. Just for that. Like
Well,
whether it's him or
we
somebody
have
else.
that.
What?
I would say we have that. I would say we have that with Rivers. I would say we have that with Prince. Rivers has taken over that defense on the court. He's taken over the instead of like the talking about I'm Pat Beverly, this is my team, follow me. He's more like, hey guys, believe in us. We're moving forward. We're doing the right thing. He's more like the positive, help the team kind of thing. I would take Austin Rivers 100 times over 100 over Pat Beverly. And Austin Rivers can at least do something on the court. Not much, but he can do something.
Sure.
Also, the only difference is, and I know that Chris, you brought this up in the past with Pat Beverly. Austin Rivers isn't out there putting the attention on himself. Like, no one's wearing remember the I Heart Pat Bev shirts? Like, no one's wearing a I Heart Austin Rivers shirt. Like, I feel like with Pat Bev, a lot of it wasn't okay. So, I was 25% of it was good for the team, building up a young squad. 75% of it was an act. So,
yeah, I mean, there's definitely pluses and minuses. What killed me the most is when we went into the playoffs and I was watching TNT and they're like, Pat Beverly leading the Timberwolves into the playoffs.
yeah.
And that, to me, that is something that it was a narrative that Pat Beverly's, PR team was pushing all year, that he was the guy that was going to push him into playoffs. Not the fact that we have Karl Anthony Towns healthy, not the fact that Anthony Edwards is making this huge transcendent superstar year. Nothing like that. Like, let's not give credit to these Wolves that have struggled and made these huge jumps. Let's give it to this veteran role player that really wasn't much of a part of it, reality. And I don't need him taking credit from guys like Anthony Edwards. Like, this is Anthony Edwards' moment to shine. It wasn't Pat Beverly's. And I think that was wrong. And I think that was dirty for him to even step up in any way and try to take some of the shine off those young players that need to make a name for themselves in this league and need to move forward. Like, that sort of idea, that might be why, Anthony Edwards isn't getting all-star votes, nationally. The fact that it wasn't like Anthony Edwards is leading the Timberwolves into the playoffs. Like, unfortunately, that sort of media attention is super powerful. Like, the media controls the masses, the sheep. And without that sort of message out there, the sheep don't know.
Yeah, particularly I'm looking at the box score from the from the play-in game. Remember, like, everyone was like, "Oh, Patrick Beverly made a huge steal at the end and led the Wolves to the playoffs." I'm looking at Patrick Beverly's stats: 7 points, 3 assists.
Yeah, and what did D'Lo?
Wow, he led us to the playoffs. Meanwhile, Ant's going for 30.
Yeah, what did D'Lo do that game?
Oh, he was great. D'Lo 29 and 6. Now Pat Bev did have 11 rebounds, but 7, 11, and 3. Wow, he led us to the playoffs. Way to go. Blake, go ahead.
I don't want to be the total Pat Bev apologist or go too far against the grain. I feel like this is getting into a rabbit hole we don't need to. But I will say I like Austin Rivers and Prince for their styles. And I agree. There was definitely a narrative being built around Pat Bev, but it's easier to do that when he didn't play every game, but he started almost every game he played. Where Austin Rivers and Prince aren't starting guys. And in our starting lineup, I don't think, unless it's Anthony Edwards, I don't think we have that sort of vocal person in that. Like, I think Jaden McDaniels lets his game talk for him, but I don't think he's a big loudmouth usually. I don't think Gobert has been that vocal, maybe because he just got here. Cat's been out. So I think that was part of it, was just that Pat Bev was starting. And also, I agree, there should have been more of a narrative around Ant versus Pat Bev. but I don't. Those two were like BFFs last season, so I don't know if Ant cared or not. Whether or not that matters for his image this year, I think he was just, I'm 20 years old and I'm happy, and this older guy's showing me the ropes, and I'm cool with that. That's like how it looked from my angle watching Ant last year.
And I think it's right. And it was the same thing with Rubio the year before that. He loved Rubio.
He did.
And guess who had the locker next to him? Rubio did. Guess who had the locker next to him the year after that? Pat Beverly did. Guess who has a locker next to Anthony Edwards this year? Rivers. I mean, It's a strategic move. They put the vets next to him, and Edwards loves to learn. He loves to listen to the vets, and that's probably one of his best qualities from what I've been hearing and that's what Torian Prince said, is like, you'll tell him something and he'll actually listen. Like, he'll want to learn. He wants to get better. And that's what's going to take him to the top.
Not to harp on Patrick Beverly, but in that playing game, he was a -5, shot 2 for 8, and shot 1 for 5 from 3-point land. I'm just saying, the stats speak for themselves. Meanwhile, Naz Reid is out here +17 because he, of course, came in when Cat fouled out, and then they went on that run.
Let's talk about how Cat did in the playing game.
Yeah, that's true. If you want to know, 11 points, 3 for 11, 0 for 2 from the 3-point line, 5 rebounds.
I thought we were done when he fouled out.
Cat's not really built for the bright lights. And that's a reason why in this offseason I wouldn't mind at least sniffing around to see. I don't know what its value is league-wide.
I don't know either.
Like, you might be able to get an Anthony Davis type package for him, or maybe not.
I think, Cat he's an odd. I feel like he's a second best guy in a championship team somewhere. But what you get out of that, I don't know. Like, if you said like, all right, Cat, you're going to the Mavs, and you're second to Luka, like, that to me could be a championship roster right there.
So that's the one roster that I think fits the best for him. When I was thinking about how to move, except they don't have anything I want. But that's the roster that I would like to see him on, a player like that, where you've got a guy that does 90% of the work, and then you can kick it out to Cat to finish the play, to hit the
What about
three-pointer.
Chris? I'm just spitballing. I don't even know if the money works here, but what about like a Dinwiddie and a Wood for a Cat? And maybe like a pick.
Well, I mean, no.
I think contract and quality wise, it's okay, but you'd have to give us picks with it. Like, and that's what the Wolves would need too. That's trading Cat would just reverse the mistake of Gobert giving away 5 picks.
I'm only trading Cat. I'm only trading Cat if I've got a guaranteed top 5 pick from somebody, and a player that's under 24 that's looking like he's going to be at least a very, very quality player. And maybe more than that?
What about now? I don't know, and we can talk about this all day. I'll wrap it up in a second. But what about like I don't know, like what about if he's still there now? I think he's going to get traded at the trade deadline. What about like I don't know. What about like a John Collins and like Bogdan or Bogdanovic and like a pick or something?
So I really like that Bogdanovic. I like that guy. But I mean, what's weird about Collins is Atlanta's been trying to trade him for 5 years, I feel like. Yeah. And nobody's taken him. Like, they've been trying to dump him since they got him. So there's something fishy going on there, because he seems like a solid player. When I watch him, he seems like he's like the size of a small forward. He's very thin. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
It's to me, that doesn't do much more. Like, Collins and Atlanta versus Mavs, and getting 2 of their better players that aren't their best, but they're better players, and a bunch of picks. Like, it's decent, but if you get rid of Cat too, and you're having Rudy sit out there and Ant, I think you start to question like what your timeline is here. Like, right now, it's very Cat and Gobert D-Lo, and Ant is nice, But once you take Cat away, like, does that change your trajectory?
And I think that's exactly what it would be. I think it would be saying we're no longer on Cat trajectory. We're building around a 21-year-old.
Which I think we should do at some point.
Which I don't mind that, but you have a 30-year-old or however old Gobert is on $40 million a year too. Like,
but what he's going to give you, I think, till the end of time is 10 rebounds, solid rim protection, and he's going to block out everybody, and he's going to shoot 70% at the rim. And I think he's going to give you that for 5 more years. And that's kind of like having a really nice left tackle when you've got a rookie quarterback. Like you want somebody who's just going to be a big ugly down low that's going to clear out space on screens, and he's going to, do the dirty work under the rim. I don't think that age is quick as, a 3-point shooting 7-footer that, doesn't really have many other elite skills.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we could do the metaphoricals all night. Like, what about this guy? What about this guy? But I think we got to wrap it up.
Gorgie Jang just got waived. Let's get him. What about him? Just kidding.
I mean, would you rather have
I'm just kidding.
Luka Garza?
I'm just joking.
Yeah, I'd rather have Luka too. Anyway, so it's been a fun one. Blake, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Chris, thanks so much for being here as always.
Let's have a big run here. We got some pretty crappy teams coming up. Let's beat them up.
We do, although we said that before the Detroit game. But Detroit might just be our kryptonite. So it might be, and we don't have to deal with them the rest of the year anyway. So
thankfully.
Till the finals.
Booker's not coming back tomorrow, right? The squad's not intact.
No, I don't think so. I think he's supposed to be out. I think what I saw that the Suns are going to have Chris Paul, Booker, Aiden, pretty much their top 6 players are all out.
Fantastic. And particularly on a back-to-back going against the Cavs. Oh, also, watch out for the Cavs game. Ricky Rubio is going to be back, most likely.
Ricky Rubio!
Everyone's favorite.
I think he played. I'd have to check. I think he played tonight. He said if everything was – I'm checking the stats right now. He might not be in the game yet. Let me see if he's checked in. He's not checked in yet. But you got to think at least by Thursday if there's no setbacks. Or I meant by Saturday. There's no setback. It is. Wolves, Suns.
That's awesome.
Suns, Cavs, and Jazz. Jazz, they play on MLK Day. It's at 3. So, I don't know. Do you guys get the day off? Chris, do you get the day off for MLK?
I think so.
There you go.
7 o'clock on Saturday, dude. I should try to get to that game. I want to see Ricky play.
Well, here's the funny. Yeah, I'll tell you off air anyway. So this is the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and tell a friend as well, because that's the best way to spread the brand is to tell your friends about it. And also make sure to give us a 5-star rating and tell us what you think. There's a option on Spotify to tell us about your podcast. It can be good or bad. We just want to know what you think about our stuff. And as always, go Wolves.